So going over here, this is my Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition Ravenloft shelf. And as you can see, there's quite a few books, but they're all sort of spine on. So what I'll do is I'll take them downstairs, lay them all out on the table so everyone can see the glorious front covers that there are on them. Plus, these are actually filled with not just the books that came with the box set, but some of them have got other bits and bobs in. So if I get them all down and lay them all out and bring the miniatures down, you can have a look. Okay, wow, this is actually a lot more books than I thought it was going to be. It's going to take me ages. So there they are stacked. There's the box sets. Back here, there's a mixture of the adventures, the rules supplements and the like. And then here's some later bits and bobs that have come out, including some of the later edition bits and bobs. But, okay, all right, so this is going to take a few moments, and I'm going to lay them all out on the table and see what sort of order I can put them in. Okay, right. So I've got even more Ravenloft stuff than I thought I had, and it is going to take absolutely ages to go through it all. So I'm just going to mainly do like the front covers and a quick bit about what the book is about, but I've got loads, and that's not including, I know I've got some more in the garage as well. So here is Ravenloft I6 by Tracy and Laura Hickman, and this is the quest that kicked all of it off, and it was one of the quests that was a bit of a game changer for Dungeons and Dragons anyway. It's very narrative driven, even though it's got a sprawling castle to explore and surrounding lands, but this is what created Ravenloft. So Ravenloft, the demi-plane of dread, is a realm where evil is rewarded its own land. Evil gets sucked into the mists, granted its own domain, whatever the evil is, and they have rulership of their domain, but they cannot escape, except some of these quests here will actually deal with that, but the evil cannot then escape the lands that they are granted. So it's kind of like a prison, but a prison with rewards. And this is the original quest that kicked it all off, where a Count Ronzarevich, he does a very evil deed and he's granted a reward. We'll keep it at that. And it has been reprinted many, many times. And it probably is the most famous Ravenloft quest. So that's the very first one. And then here is Ravenloft 2, The House on Griffin Hill, which is a sort of semi-sequel and introduces a new part of the Domain of Dread, a new part of the land mass as more and more evil is drawn into it. And then here is the original Realm of Terror box set. So as part of the launch of Ravenloft, they did this really, really cool box set. Here's the book, and introduces loads of new concepts to Dungeons and Dragons, including madness, terror, and fear. Briefly goes through all the different realms in the lands of the core, but actually it has these beautiful cardstock prints in it, and I'll do a separate video on them, but all different sort of locations within the Realm of Terror, various stats and charts on here, but also has this glorious map here. Well, actually, to be fair, I've pulled out the wrong one. This is the Islands of Terror. So these are floating land masses. So this isn't water in between, this is mists. So you might walk off one side and end back the other if the mists of Ravenloft don't want to let you go, or you might walk off one side and end up on another over here. So these are the Islands of Terror. And then if I must have one of the main, here we go. And all of this would have been in one box set. Here we go. So here is the huge continent that's surrounded by the mists in Ravenloft. So each one of these a separate domain, as denoted by the little red line, and the lords of their domain can actually seal their domains shut, and open them whenever they want, but actually the mists themselves also have power to choose who goes, who arrives, and what happens with them. Now, each of these domains and the Islands of Terror, pretty much all of them have a quest associated with them at some point within 2nd edition. But there we go, let's fold that up. So then we have Forbidden Lore, which is a rules expansion to go with Realm of Terror. And this came with fortune-telling cards, fortune-telling dice, and more rules to expand on. Well, this one's here is Cryptic Alliances, so goodies and baddies, because there are actually goodies spread out, but mainly everyone's a baddie. That's a bit generalising, not everyone's a baddie, but there's a lot of villainous people in Ravenloft. But they then, due to its popularity, they relaunched it in this box set here, which pretty much consolidated these two into one. And then this one, if I just pop this one open. Again, we've got a little bit of repetition with the artwork, but we have a book on the Domains of Dread. We have a book on the basic Realm of Terror rules, the cards, more maps, Dungeon Master's screen, cool Dungeon Master's screen that highlights things such as turning undead, but it does have quite a little bit about the Altered Wizard spells, because magic doesn't work quite the same in Ravenloft. So, for example, Detect Good and Detect Evil won't necessarily work because the mists kind of confound the telling of good and evil. But then there's a little bit here about when to do a powers check, because actually if the player characters commit bad acts, there's a chance that they could attract the interest of the demiplane of dread itself. So that's quite good. There's a little chart on powers checks. Now, if I just open this map up, so bearing in mind this is the 2nd box set, there is now a great big gaping hole, the Shadow Rift. I know what's at the bottom. There's a great big gaping hole where some realms used to be, but they have been removed as part of something called the Grand Conjunction, which I'll come to in a minute, because actually one of the first big storylines they did revolved around one of the characters trying to escape the mists of Ravenloft, and in the end it kind of changes the landscape forever. And then I suppose my final introductory book is the hardback Domains of Dread book they brought out. So when they launched Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition, towards the end of it, they kind of did a 2.5, and this kind of marries up with this. The rules are ever so slightly different, more expanded. There's a little bit more customizable options with it, and this has got updated profiles on all the different lords of darkness that are surrounded the land in the demiplane of dread. There's some of them. Bit of a stylistic art change as there was in the later 2nd edition books, but there goes little Islands of Terror. And I want to say, I'm sure I've got a big map at the back. No, maybe not. Maybe the map's earlier on. There we go. Map earlier on. Again, big hole in the middle, the Shadow Rift. But what was good with this book is some of the extra stuff they gave the player characters to help them survive in the Domains of Dread. This meaty stack here, these are all quests, and it's going to take a moment to flick through them all, so I'm just going to move it. So this is Feast of Goblins, where I'm going to say his name's Lucas Harkus. He is a wolf not a werewolf, I want to say, and he's trying to get the Crown of Soldiers, and he has a goblin army, but ultimately it's about consolidation of power And again, quests in the olden days used to come with so much stuff. Look at all these maps, loads and loads of maps, and a Dungeon Master screen. But yeah, he wants to consolidate his power, and he actually wants to take over one of the realms. But look, little pictures of, there you go, little pictures of all the locations. And it was really, really good. But unbeknownst at the time, this would be the first quest in an arc that would be called the Grand Conjunction, where they would actually destroy part of Ravenloft. So this is the next part. This is the Ship of Horror. Big evil sorcerer here. We have like a ghost ship. The players board the ship and then are tormented along the way. There you go, map of the ship. People, there you go, there's a map of the island off the coast. So set in the Sea of Sorrows. And then this one is set on an island of terror. So it's in the desert, Hakir. And there's a mummy that wants to basically overthrow the current Lord of the Domain, who's also a mummy. Players have actually not got to stop them. They battle to the death at the end, so that's quite good. And then this is my favourite. This is Night of the Walking Dead, where there's this town here, and once the players arrive, there is a kind of Jack the Ripper-esque murderer leaving licorice about, and it ends up with a massive battle in the streets with zombie upon zombie upon zombie. Very, very good. And this one for low-level characters. 1 to 3. Now this one is in one of the parts of the Domain of Dread. There's this giant mountain that no one goes near because it tends to drive people mad. That's because under the mountain is literally filled to the brim with mind flayers doing nefariously evil stuff. So there is the mind flayers underneath the mountain, Mount Blutzburg. Players have got to get in there and stop them without going mad themselves. The Mind Flayers doing all sorts of experiments and want to do experiments on the players as well. And then this one is the sort of big 2-part finale ending where they have to stop the Lich Azalin from escaping and breaking Ravenloft to pieces. I want to say, if I've remembered it correctly. It's been a very, very long time. But it ends on a cliffhanger, and they end up time traveling back to when Ravenloft was sort of formed and going into Stranz von Zarovich's earlier life. And basically, that's the first realm of Dread. This is Bavovia, but this is actually before it was plucked from where it was, and this is where it was actually on its original plane before it got sucked into the demi-plane of Dread. So this one's Web of Illusions, includes it revolves around the sort of tiger people, the Rashka. Can't actually remember when it's set. I do remember it's in a tropical... jungle. And there's the Raja's estate. There goes a little map of it there. And this is one of the few that I've not played. Then this one, Adam's Wrath. He's kind of like a Frankenstein's monster character, and he wants revenge against his master in this one. And then this one's in a little island of terror. It's a little creepy one. It's just purely a small town. And actually, you enter through these bits here in the mists, and that is literally, this town is the whole domain. There is nothing more, and the people here are terrified, and it's actually a puppet, a sentient puppet that has taken over, and it's the leader, it's the Dark Lord. And then here is the first reprint of the original I6 Ravenloft quest, House of Strand. So updated, got some extra stuff, really goes to town with the very, very cool maps on this one. There's Castle Ravenloft. And then here, another mummy one. So this is the Awakening. And I want to say, in the hills, they are digging and they find something. And it starts to torment and attack, and they have to basically lay it to rest over a big long quest. Now, this is when the black roses bloom, and here is Lord Soth, who is actually a Dragonlance villain, a famous Dragonlance villain, who was then sucked into the mists and given their own domain. So, and it's kind of like a feudal, almost Arthurian knights era, because actually a lot of the domains have got different levels of technology, I suppose is the easiest way to describe it. Some of them are really primitive and just filled with monsters and beasts. Some of them are kind of like functioning society, almost like the 1800s. So real different levels of technology, society in each of them, and this one is an almost medieval one. Again, lots of nice maps. And then this here, Circle of Darkness. This is about witches, if I remember correctly. So House of Bones. Let's have a look. Yeah, I think this one was about witches. I've not played this one, I don't think. Have a look. Right, there we go. So we've got the city, which is the Circle of Darkness, and there's a temple in it, and absolutely loads of random statistics and monster events. Actually, a bit of a difference, really. Didn't normally get that. This is Howls in the Night, which is very Hound of the Baskervilles-y. The clearing. There's a beast, there's a bog. It is very similar to Hound of the Baskervilles. I want to say, yeah, it's quite a low level adventure. And then while that one was Hound of the Baskervilles, this is Hour of the Knife, which is Jack the Rippery from what I remember. I want to say there's a mansion. It's more investigatory rather than dungeon crawly. I mean, most Ravenloft is investigatory. Okay, yes, I do remember. It's the one with the doppelgangers. And the players can be replaced, if I remember correctly. And then keeping the trend with popular culture. So we've had Hound of the Baskervilles, Jack the Ripper. This, Neither Man Nor Beast, is, despite the picture, it's the Island of Dr. Moreau, the H.G. Wells story. It's them doing their version. So there's Dr. Franz Manor, and he's the equivalent of Dr. Moreau in this one, and he's keeping people penned up. And I want to say he's making mongrel men in it. Yeah, players run aground and have to survive and not be turned into experiments themselves. Now, this really good one's actually got a companion that I'll go look at in a little bit detail in a minute. But this is Servants of Darkness, and it's really, really witch-centred. But it's all linked to the Shadow Rift. Now, art style has changed again, and I do like the new art in these later ones. I like the kind of livery, the kind of way they're laid out. But it's about witches in Keening, but lots and lots of stuff is going on around the edge of the Shadow Rift, and the players in this one kind of end up getting into mischief up here, then more mischief down here, but it can actually lead to them going into the Rift. Now, that's not in this quest. The Rift is a completely separate quest, which I've got in this pile here, I want to say. Oh no, might be at the bottom of this pile. And it's really good at the bottom. Now, this is Forgotten Terror. I unfortunately at the time never picked up the Forgotten Realms quest that precedes it, but the idea is there's a Forgotten Realm. In the Forgotten Realms, there's this object that's dealt with in this quest but then as a result, the players end up in this Ravenloft quest. It can be played separately, or you can play it together. Unfortunately, I've never had a chance to play it because I've never managed to pick this one up. And then this is Vecna Reborn. So Vecna, super popular evil lich villain who is spread throughout Greyhawk and pretty much all of Dungeons and Dragons, made incredibly popular recently thanks to Stranger Things. But yeah, this is Vecna Reborn, bringing back after Die Vecna Die and some of the other stories. So this is a very high level quest, trying to deal with them. And as always, let's have a quick look. Should have, yeah, there we go. Got little monstrous manual pages at the back of the book. Howl of the Moon, pretty much standard werewolf fare. There's an element of Guess the Werewolf as well, having to accompany the guards, stop the werewolves from attacking the village, but actually there's a little bit more to it. It's quite a good one. And then this is the first in an epic 3-part story. So this is the first part, Death Unchained, where the Lich Aslin is trying to turn his realm, his area, into... He's trying to, again, escape, as he keeps doing in various stories. Players get drafted in to stop him, but it's a big 3-parter. So this is the first part. And then this is the second part where, spoilers, he wins. And the player characters actually can end up dead, but still player characters at the end of this one. Because at the end of this one, he literally wipes out all life in his domain and it becomes a new domain, Necropolis. And then here, this is the Evil Eye. So I want to say it's about the Vishtani, the travellers, travelling gypsy characters. There they go, playing their instruments. Nice map. Bright colours. And then this here is Chilling Tales, which is a mixture of short adventures, some of them low level, some of them a bit longer than the others, but lots of nice little short adventures taking place in various different domains. And then Champions of the Mist is actually a book of all different heroic characters, I want to say. There we go. So it's kind of like a who's who of heroes, sort of trying to actually stand out and stand up to the evil lords of Ravenloft. So that's quite good. Not a lot of extra content, but mainly just characters that you could drop in. They're not specifically tied to any realm, so you can just drop them in and have them help along the characters. And then this is Carnival, which is absolutely excellent. And it's about a travelling carnival that can actually control breaching the mists. And so whereas no one can control the mists or where they go, and it's luck and it's where the mists want you to go, this one here, the carnival, if you travel with the carnival, you might actually get to where you want to go. It's actually a very, very good story. So that's Carnival. It's got a nice twist at the end about why they can actually travel the mists as well. And then this is the TSR Jam 1999. And the reason this is in here, because it actually has a Ravenloft quest in it. Yeah, the Heart's Final Beat. So it's not many pages, but this is from some time ago. Only a couple of pages, but I did try to collect everything that I could get my hands on at the time. So not a lot to it. So that would have actually been run as part of like a convention quest. Over here, I've got some boxed quests. So this one here is Castles Forlorn. And in this castle here up the top, it's kind of like a sort of Scottish-y themed, possibly given away by the Loch Ness Monster, or should I say a zombie Loch Ness Monster, Loch Monster. Here there is a ghost, it's the Lord of the Domain, and it involves the characters travelling around the same castle, but in 3 separate time periods. So that's quite good. That's one of the first boxed quests they did. There's the Death's Head Horror Tree. And then it came with various different books, as you can see. And as always, lots and lots of cool maps. Obviously, 3 maps of the castle in 3 separate time periods. So then this is Light in the Belfry, which is got a CD with it. So it came with an audio CD of ambient music and other bits and bobs, which I think is quite cool. And it's, even though it was for level 6 to 8, I always felt like it was quite a basic-y quest. What else have we got now? Just some other leaflety bits. And map of the domain there. And there's the castle. Mansion house that's got the light in the top that the players have got to investigate. But yeah, very, very cool CD. And then this is the Nightmare Lands. So not so much a quest, more of a series of books explaining how dreams can, I suppose dreams can become nightmares in the Nightmare Lands. It's got a little monstrous appendix. It's all about dream spawns, and basically the players go to sleep. There's an asylum, but actually dreams can be just as deadly in Ravenloft as... Oh, dreams can be just as deadly in Ravenloft as being awake. And of course, if you have a restless sleep, you're less likely to heal overnight. And then this is Bleak House, the death of Rudolf van Richten. So Rudolf van Richten, he's the Abraham Van Helsing style character of Dungeons and Dragons, of Ravenloft. And he, throughout many of the quests in this stack here, he has been, well, not many, he's in a few of them. He is like the principal guiding character that will help you along the way, provide advice, and he's been locked in this insane asylum and everything goes wrong, including his death. So actually in this one I have a review from a magazine of it that gave it 8 out of 10 apparently. And this is from a time period, this feels like it's set more 1800s rather than medieval. 3 big books explaining the story. So first of all, they've got to get to Bleak House, then they've got to escape Bleak House where they're locked up in impatience, and then finally there's a little bit about the monsters and the characters and a bit on madness. Oh. It's a Dark Sun book, that shouldn't be in there. That needs to go in the Dark Sun pile. Ah, lovely poster map. And then finally, here we have the Grim Harvest. So this is the last of the quest box sets. And in this, Aslan has won. He's pretty much sucked all the life out of his realm and he's turned it into Necropolis, which is completely undead, literally filled with all sorts of new undead beasties as well as old undead beasties. But as a last-ditch attempt, the player characters have actually been turned into undead themselves, and they are different. So no longer they'd be like elf fighter or whatever, they would be like a revenant. There are new character classes just for this quest, just so the characters can actually stand a chance, because anything that enters Necropolis dies. So even after the act that caused it all to happen, anything that enters it dies. So here we have this meaty stack of now rules supplements. So we're done with the quests, we're on to rule supplement. So there's a lot of Van Richten guide books. So we have Van Richten's Guide to the Ancient Dead, which is mummies. Van Richten's Guide to the Created, which is golems. Van Richten's Guide to Ghosts, to Fiends, to Lich, to werebeasts, to vampires, and to the Vistani. And just looking through them, basically it talks about the famous vampires, or whatever the book is talking about, talks about how to defeat them, talks about their behaviours, talks about lots of different sorts, feeding habits in this case, weaknesses, how to create them, and actually gives the dungeon masters tips on how to flesh out their own versions of these creatures. They also did a companion of it. They reprinted them in these absolutely excellent, almost like handbooks, I suppose, so the players could find them in Quest and actually have something to reference themselves. And what's special about this one is this is volume 3, but this comes with, oh yeah, it's now Wizards of the Coast, no longer TSR, but this has the unpublished Van Vrichten's Guide to Witches in it, which is very good because they never did the witch one of these, and you can only get it in the compendium. So here we have the Book of Crypts. So it's a book basically talking about the dark places you can send your players to in Ravenloft. Book on the Islands of Terror, which, as previously stated, they're kind of free-floating realms within Ravenloft. It goes into each one in a little bit of detail and then tells you all about the Lord of the realm and what their powers are, how they can close the realm, what they can do. And then this is Dark Lords. So this again focuses on the Ravenloft Dark Lords. Not so much on their realms themselves, but talks about them as individual people. Shows some of their castles, locations, etc. And then here, these are excellent. So for starters, for use with all campaign settings, so not just Ravenloft, but off the back of the Van Vrichten's guides, they then did the Children of the Night series, and they are absolutely fabulous. If I get to it, they are individual, so this is vampires, so they are individual vampire characters, and they're not all the same. So if we have a look, so we have a Nosferatu, a sea vampire, a vampiress, a desert vampire. This one I can't pronounce it, but it's kind of like a floating stingray that's a vampire, an elf, a Vorlog. It has individual vampiric characters, not specifically tied to any domain, that you can drop into a quest. Now, I actually think this is one of the weaker ones. If I find, so this one's ghosts, this one's werebeasts, but this is the last one they did. And this is Children of the Night, the Created. And you can drop these into any quest, but you have all sorts here. So you've got a steam golem, you've got a wax golem who's taken over like a waxworks museum, one that's living armor, and they're really, really good. If you can get just one thing for inspiration, this is the book. It's so good. You've got, so this guy here, he's the villain. He's not actually a golem himself. Instead, he's made lots of little golems, almost like the Puppet Master from the Puppet Master films. There's really, really good ideas in these books. That's the Wax Museum, where the wax model has taken over and replaced the owner. Very, very good. And I quite like this one on the front. It's kind of like Wicker Man stick golem. And then here we have the Shadow Rift. So as I've alluded to previously, there is something at the bottom of the Shadow Rift. And what it actually is, it's the Seelie Court and a pixie fairy realm. So all the pixies, oh, there you go, it's on the map. So there's the Shadow Rift. So this is what's at the bottom. There's a couple of ways down, but nobody would normally venture down because they don't believe there is a bottom. Actually, there is. And here there are all the fairies, all the pixies, all the kind of fantasy style characters, the little ones. They're all hanging out and they're kind of at war with each other. There's a Dark Queen that rules it. It's very, very good. And it's a follow-on from the previous quest I showed earlier, the Servants of Darkness. Because actually, in Servants of Darkness, they end up here, and then they can travel down these secret waterways and they can end up there. And actually there's an ultimate evil right at the end of it that they have to prevent escaping and reclaiming its dark realm. And then this is Forged to Darkness, which is a series of cursed weapons, if I remember. Cursed weapons and cursed objects. It's quite good. It's all right. So then here we have the classics. So I have the original Monstrous Compendium Appendix, but it is in my folder with all my other ones. So I've brought this one down here because originally the Monstrous Compendiums were page punched pocket things that you clipped in a binder. So I've still got them all upstairs. But this is the reprint that has, the first appendix has just random, there's Scarecrow, Shadow Fiend, Greater Mummy, lots of Ravenlofty monsters, different lycanthropes. But what I really like is actually Compendium 2, which introduces lots of individual characters. So there we go. So this is a spectre, but actually it's not. It's Jazeera Wagner, the Ice Queen. And this is a night hag, but actually she's got a name. She's strict. So these are named monsters. So there's Althea, who's a Medusa. So name monsters and where they are. And there's like a brain in a jar, which is my favourite of them. So as they expanded the world, they decided to kind of branch out a little bit. So this is Ravenloft, Mask of the Red Death and Other Tales. So this is Terror in the 1800s, and this is actually set in the real world. So instead of being set in Ravenloft, set on the various different Dungeons and Dragons planes, this is a box set that they did set in Victorian times. So there's a steam train, there's a man shooting at a guy with a skull for a face. And what it did was it took a lot of real world locations. Oh, there's a random dice there. Took a lot of real world locations from the 1800s, from the end of the sort of Jack the Ripper era, at like 1890, 1888 for Jack the Ripper. And they introduced new proficiencies, new classes, and yeah, you could actually, they took the D&D rules and they took the Ravenloft rules, except you could run around Victorian England, Victorian America, all around the world, doing whatever you wanted to do. So Dungeon Master screen, Red Jack, which is actually a Jack the Ripper quest, the Red Death, which is based on the Mask of the Red Death. You get the idea. So they take a mixture of Poe and Lovecraftian stories, mix them up with Dungeons and Dragons rules, and then they did this, which is incredibly interesting, the Gothic Earth Gazetta, which tackles real timeline, so the last 10 years of the 1800s, and it talks about famous, real-life famous events, but then puts a supernatural twist on them. And historically, it is actually really, really interesting. Don't know what we've got. Oh, we've got a picture of various calendars and the such like there. So that's quite cool. And then they also did a guide to Transylvania. So, as in real life Transylvania. And, well, I suppose supposedly real life Dracula. And then unfortunately I had to get rid of my Dungeon magazines ages ago. My mum said they were taking up too much space in the garage back in the early 2000s. So I've only got a few left. So this is a Dragon magazine that had a Ravenloft Bestiary in it and various other Ravenloft bits. Here's another one that had quite a lot of Ravenloft stuff in it. And then before I chucked my Dragon magazines, I cut out a lot of articles for anything that was relevant to Ravenloft, and then I've sort of stored them all together. But what I actually have here is there were a group of people who did all their own Ravenloft stuff online in the mid to late 90s, and they published various books, and I don't know whether they're still there, but I'm quite lucky to have printed out I want to say the first one they did, the first net book, the Book of Souls, printed out. So it's quite a lot of pieces of paper, but I printed all of this out and stapled it together many years ago, because actually these guys here that wrote it, they did a fantastic job of adding to the world of Ravenloft. Now, while my mum did make me, unfortunately, chuck my dragon magazines, I didn't chuck my dungeon. So I have all the dungeon magazines that have Ravenloft quests in. So this is one of my favourites. This is an Invasion of the Body Snatchers style quest where there's a small town. Can't remember if it's called Hobbs End, actually, something like that. And the body snatcher plants have crashed outside because there's been a meteorite and everyone's being taken over by body snatcher plants. It's really good. And here's another one, it's got werewolf. This one here, that's not relevant to it, but there is a Ravenloft quest in there. It's another Ravenloft one. So the dungeon magazine in the 90s was, well, in the 80s, it's a magazine published by TSR and filled with like 10 to 20 page quests, and often for all different realms, but I tended to pick up the ones that had realms that I like. So I've got all the Dark Sun ones, got all the Arcadim ones, and I've got all the Ravenloft ones. So this one here is about set in Shadowball Manor, and it's actually the Lord of the Domain's a cursed sword, which is very cool. There's another one, nice front cover, and then incredibly Halloweeny, there's another one that's got a Ravenloft quest in it. So I like all of these. They're all very good short little quests, and I must say some of these are actually better than some of the proper published ones. So reaching the end now, what else have I got? Got the modern books, got the Van Richten's Guide. I think it's absolutely brilliant. It's probably one of the best of the 5th edition books. Goes into great detail on the different realms. Also goes into great detail with a lot of the monsters. I particularly like the Bagman as a later inclusion of creatures, because actually most of them are just reprints of creatures from old, but actually he's a really good one. Here is the modern reprint of Ravenloft, the original quest. Here's the 3rd edition one, Expedition to Castle Ravenloft. And then over here, what have I got? So I've got more of these in the garage, but while I don't have all of them, I do have some of the novels that they wrote set in the world of Ravenloft. And I've also got some of the Rollpather box sets. Now I've got more of them loose in the garage mixed in with my Warhammer stuff, but there's the Castle Forlorn box. Have a quick look. That's what they'd look like. Mine don't, they're not painted, they're just loose. And here's the Castle Ravenloft characters. I could go on. I've actually got quite a few of the modern Icons of the Realm Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft minis. They're pre-painted plastic characters. You can hear them rattling around, but yeah, I think that's long enough. So lots and lots and lots of Ravenloft stuff that I've collected over the years. Thank you very much for watching. If you're still watching after 45 minutes, it's probably the longest I've ever talked. Have a good day. See you all later. Bye.